We'll pick back up, go ahead and moving into the Attorney General group. The Attorney General group has experienced some pretty significant underutilization of revenues. If you look at the $476,000 of 07 that remained unexpended, $218,000 of that it was related to the advocacy initiative. That number grows considerably the next year, the $1.2 million. $791,000 of that was related to the advocacy initiative, and $530,000 is projected to be unobligated or unexpended of the 1.4 based on current year expense patterns. There's a 1.2 million budget in the 3.6, and the 09 projection point out of 2.5 million of projected expenditures within this group as compared to the 3.9 of 08 is an obvious decrease, a significant decrease. And 1.3, all of that decrease is related to the advocacy initiative. So that one budget is driving a lot of the movements on this group. By funding source, the Attorney General, as you can see, is predominantly general fund. The staffing for the Attorney General, as you can see, as 09 had a significant vacancy in their salaries, and that vacancy is carrying into the 2010 budget. There were some staffing increases that occurred of about 8 to 10 positions back in the 2009 budget. You can see it on this next slide. There were 7 new ones along with 5, and the majority of those are being recurring in this budget process as showing up as vacant positions. The Attorney General budget as a whole is decreasing by $378,000. As I mentioned, that is the advocacy initiative. Part of that, however, is being offset by increases of over $367,000 in personnel costs over 09 and the 08 spending level. The department also includes now both the Attorney General and the Justice Department. So as they request funding, it includes 8.5 vacant positions, or 40% of the group's total staffing package. So what that reflects is a significant increase on Gen Fund and IDC, because a portion of that Law and Justice group is funded out of the general indirect cost pool.
Councilor Jordan.
Okay, how many vacant positions did you say they had?
There's 9 in this budget.
And then how much did they underspend their budget from the past year?
'08 was 1.2 million, but 800 of that, 2/3 of that 1.2 is the advocacy initiative. The other 400 would be the programmatic line items, salaries, fringes, all the operational costs.
So 800,000 of it is the advocacy?
Of the 1.2 in 08. The 09, the current year budget, is projecting 1.5, projecting again, but it's projecting 1.47, and 530 of that, or a little over a third of it, is related to the advocacy initiative, with about 900 of that 1.4 regular operational budgets.
So there's maybe 800,000 in play there, depending on, or maybe a little more. Okay. So there's something between 1.2 and 1.4 possibly in play there, along with 9 vacant positions.
Well, the vacant positions would be driving
The money.
that number.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, there's a direct relationship between those vacant positions and the projected unexpended dollars, because that's what they are. The unexpended dollars are for the vacant positions.
I just want to make sure I understood what you were saying. Thank you.
Speaker President.
Callie, under 101, 120 legislative initiative.
Yes.
Can you explain to me what that is?
That is
The question was to explain the advocacy initiatives.
Legislative initiative.
Legislative initiatives.
Melanie's gonna address
Oh,
that.
okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. Wrong person. It's a small general fund budget that we've utilized for those programmatic attorney fees that can't be paid by federal funds. And some examples might be if it gets into lobbying for contract support cost changes or lobbying for roads reauthorization, that kind of thing. That's the fund that we'll pay that from to ensure that we don't get problems with the federal funds.
Councilor Hossie. Okay. Councilor Fishing.
Yeah, I've got a question about the lobbying effort. I know we spend a whole lot of money on lobbying, and I know we're going to go over some more later. But I'm curious, do you all do some polling before you start the lobbying and then do it afterwards to see how effective it was? Because I'd like to see some results from it.
What we do primarily is internal staff do the lobbying. Obviously, we've got the Washington office, we've got our government relations people here, and then we also have people in the programs that are the subject matter experts that are really all of these staff obviously do most of the work as it goes to those efforts. But occasionally what helps is, for instance, on both contract support and roads, we've participated at times in coalitions with other tribes. And usually when we enter into a coalition with a group of other tribes, and it can be nationwide, we'll hire one attorney firm that will coordinate that effort across the nation and bring all of those voices into doing those lobbying efforts along with our staff. And so it brings numbers along with it, and tribes coming in on one page, and those kind of efforts are really significant and do help us out quite a bit in those areas. But we're pretty selective as to how much of that we do, because we by and large do it with our own staff.
Could you get me, I want to see what the baseline was when you started and the results after all the money was spent, to see how effective it was.
Sure. Particularly in the contract support arena, this year's appropriations bill contains the largest increases ever in contract support costs, and we're really pleased about that.
And we've reduced that line item by $300,000, and I'm not hearing any objection from the administration. So should I take that to mean that as the year goes by, if it appears that we're needing more, you'll come back, but as of now, that's sufficient?
Are we still talking about legislative initiatives?
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I strike that. I'm talking about advocacy initiative, which I thought that's what she was talking about, but I apologize.
Okay. I was responding to legislative initiatives,
Okay.
and I may have been confused. But on advocacy initiative, yes, we did come forward with a cut when we realized we were going to need to reduce our gen fund budget significantly. This is one, it's a very large budget. It's where one of the places we looked first. We are going to be discontinuing one of the public relations or government relations contracts in that budget, and with that we were able to make the reduction in 2010. So that was that one specific contract that didn't take into account the extra $300,000 that was just reduced.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. We ready to move? Okay. Our first large service group, the education services. You see that there's a significant amount of unexpended.
Mr. Raymond, may I interrupt you for a moment?
Certainly. Sure.
And I'd like to announce that the head of our education department is having a birthday today. I'd like to wish him a happy birthday.
How old is it?
32. You said 32 is what you told me? 47. He doesn't look 47.
Kind of cruel, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't go there.
Fifth. That takes fifth. I did. Speaker asked me if he doesn't look 47, what does he look? I'll take a fifth on that one. Some of this chart's showing obviously some large numbers of unexpended at the top. I want to explain some of these bar charts to you in general. Let's look at the 21 million for the current year. More than half of that, 11 million of that, is related to Sequoia High School, and I'll go into that a little more detail in the Sequoia discussion. There's 2 million of higher education that's in the projection. However, the higher education numbers are really difficult to project because of the timing of when those checks disperse. So that 21 is pretty suspect when it comes to a couple of the 3 of it that's related to that. 2 million of it is culture, which also has a pattern in that group, culture group, of underutilization of primarily discretionary dollars. The 15 million of 08, now these are audited numbers, these aren't projected. 6 million is Sequoia High School, 3 million higher ed, and 1.5 million culture. The 14 million of 07, similar situation, 7 million Sequoia High School, 3 million higher ed, and 750,000 in culture. We're closing books. What really sticks out to me when I analyze this and reviewed it is we have a consistent book closing. 2006, which is not on here, but is consistent. 2007, 2008, all those are audited books. They all have considerable higher education carryover, okay, and culture carryover. First off, the higher ed. Let's talk about that for just a moment. The higher education carryover, which is consistently being in the $1 million+ amount, is because of the obligation period in relation to the expenditure period. When we accept the applications, when they're going to school, we have a mid-year payment, okay? Our fiscal year, our appropriation year ends right around the same time that schools begin. So we can get caught in this almost like a forward funding, therefore it carries over into the next year. We intentionally did that. I don't know if you recall, 5 years ago, we intentionally forward funded one whole semester so we don't ever get in a situation where all of a sudden we're beginning a fiscal year, school's starting, and we can't even meet the obligations right on 10/1 because we're waiting on 10/1 to cut those checks to all those college students. You with me? Does that mean? Okay. Anyway, won't belabor that. Excuse me. Education, their funding sources predominantly are federal funds. You can see here, and you can see the big impact of the unexpended dollars. The biggest contributor to that, Sequoia High School, in comparison to the 08 actuals. Okay, because again, the 08 actuals, 6 million of that Sequoia. Now they have a kind of a construction capital fund that's been carrying over from year to year, and there's also an education carryover budget coming into the cycle where there's obviously there's a ramp up here. I don't know if it's an intentional ramp up of carryover or not, but there's a significant ramp up. So there's an enormous amount of carryover, be it either for capital expenditure for a project or something at the school or not. There is a large fund balance being built. Now, I will make one comment on here. In this budget, there is a budget called Sequoia Carryover. It doesn't say it's obligated or tied to any particular capital expenditure, whether it's a facility improvement or a new facility or whatever, that has some full-time equivalents being funded out of carryover. So I need to point that out. We might need to get a better understanding of just how do we plan on continuing to pay for these full-time employees when the carryover is spent. Plus, it's obviously not a good practice to be appropriating one-time funds for salaries, unless you have contract employees and they know that they've got a horizon of employment. Here's the staffing pattern. 2.8 million is projected to be underutilized this year. That 2.8 million is almost split 1/3 between three programs: child development, culture, and Sequoia High School. 777, 785, and 730 are the numbers that's being projected over your underutilization. The 1.1 million underutilization, over 500,000 of that also was culture. And the other half was the executive director budget. Here's the staffing numbers for education. They are carrying a pretty high occupancy or a very low unfilled position percentage of the total. And they're pretty focused. 37 vacancies in this budget. 16 of them are child development, 11 of them Sequoia, 7 culture.
Councilor Cobb.
I have a couple of questions. Just to clarify some things, and it may be somebody from education, I don't know. Notice the immersion 105-1012 at the very top, child development. It's not quite been cut in half, but quite a bit. Went from 13,943 to 8,683. Conversely, your Cherokee translators went from 50,000 to 186,160. And I also have a question on Serve America STEM. I'd just like to know a little bit of details on that, if I could. Does that went up about $1 million?
I can provide you information on your first one.
Thank you.
Dr. Cobb. The immersion is a motor vehicle tax apportionment budget. That number will get adjusted as we know what the apportionment numbers are from the tag.
Gotcha. That's what I thought.
It's just an estimate that's thrown in here as a kind of a placeholder at this point.
Good.
The other ones.
I got a question on translators, and I got a question on Serve America. Serve America is Sequoia, but I have a question on translators. It went from 50,000 to 186,160. I'm just curious what.
Yeah, the Serve America is the Learn and Serve program.
Good.
It's not a Sequoia program.
I just thought it was under Sequoia, so that's why.
It's the Learn and Serve program is our only program that we had that was funded competitively, and it was not refunded, so there's a decrease there. We will continue this year with a no-cost extension. In other words, no cost to us.
Let me make sure we're on the same. We are on line item 3751045, Doug. And that's in Sequoia. That's on page 5 of your little handout you gave me.
903,000?
Correct.
Okay, that's a federal grant.
Oh yeah, that's
STEM?
that's a STEM program.
That's what I want to know. Is a federal grant? That was my question.
Right. That's
Okay.
the science math
Good.
federal program.
That's really what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Make sure it's a federal grant. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Councilor Jordan.
I'd like to make a motion at this time that we give $100,000 to the Head Start program to continue on with an after-school program. A lot of our children that the employees have there don't have a place to go at 2:30. And we previously have had an after-school program up there, and because of budget cuts, we've eliminated it. And there's a great need because any of y'all that have children know that you're constantly worrying about what do you do with your kids when you don't get off till 5 and they get out of school at 2:30. So I would like to encourage each of you all to join me in that motion that we give $100,000 to the Head Start program, which is only 80% federally funded. They have to get their other 20% beg, borrow, or steal. So I'd make that motion. We give $100,000 to Head Start for their after-school activities.
Second. Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. We'll give $100,000 to the Head Start After School program. Councilor Watts.
We already give them additional money through tribal revenue, through the tag dollars, which we took away from our public school children. I'm not saying that it's not important to serve those kids, but we're already giving them monies. So I don't understand how there's no demonstrations, there's an unmet need for the $100,000. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And just a point of clarification, that would be from the general fund, not, it would be in addition to the tag money. The tag money is already figured into the operation of Head Start, so they've got no leeway on what they do there. This $100,000 will put back in place where we can keep a couple of the classrooms open for those parents that cannot, because of work, come and pick their children up at 2:30.
Counselor Cobb.
Just clarification on that, are those classrooms currently not open?
No, at 2:30.
So are there
shut down.
any classrooms open? For
Not
after
for
school?
after-school activity. We even eliminated after-school at early development. We don't have any place for our kids to go now.
Counselor Baker.
Yeah, and I might point out that a lot of these kids are employees' kids.
Yeah.
That obviously they work later. And, this is one of the largest programs that the nation runs. I mean, it's 5.5 million, and we virtually put no money into it, no travel funds, and the sheer legal ramifications are they've got to come up with 20% in kind. So they've been stretching and struggling to get parents to volunteer so that they can come up with these match dollars. And we're the only tribe in the United States that doesn't supplement their Head Start program. And for years, it has stood alone with just the federal funding, and they've done a great job of running it, but it's getting harder and harder each year. And to the point that they're cutting services, to our kids just to stay within the budget. And, I'd like to have heard a whole lot more than 100,000, but 100,000 is a good start, and I'm not wanting to get greedy here. But, we as a tribe give nothing for that 20% match. And I was glad to hear Callie tell us that, in years past, our Head Start teachers have not gotten any of that bonus because the federal Head Start does not allow any bonuses or anything out of that. But I was sure glad to hear that she was going to have a special fund of those bonuses so that those teachers and such could participate in that program. Thank you.
Now, clarification, this is under childhood development account 1010224.
It actually is probably not under any, it will have to be created as that after-school program there, I think, was the early development.
Okay.
This would actually be Head Start.
Okay.
And so they may have to create a 101 addition there.
Okay. The motion's been made and seconded that we add 100,000 to the after-school program from the general fund. Comment, Ms. Fletcher?
I just one thing I was going to point out that, and this is off of Doug's reports as well, their 2010 budget from the grant funding is 1.3 million more than what was expended in 08. So there is a lot more money available in 2010 than was actually expended in 08. And as far as setting up a new after-school program, I don't know, without talking to the program administrators, what all that would entail and whether 100,000 would cover it or whether they could start extending the hours with existing funding.
Just
Dr.
a
Cobb.
point of clarification,
Okay.
if I could, because I know about that funding. That is stimulus funding that comes already told how they're going to use it, and the after school was not part of it.
That's the reason why.
And the 100,000, because I've been checking into this, will keep a couple of classrooms open, which we can then funnel all the kids to that can't go anywhere else.
Dr. Cobb.
With all due respect, this is part of my problem with throwing money at something. I'm absolutely, if we need to do something, especially for employees, after school, you can count me in, but I want to see the numbers. I don't know if 100,000 is enough. I don't know if 100,000 is too much. I have absolutely no data. I'm going to pull $100,000 from something, from Gen Fund, and I'm going to put it into something. I have no numbers. I have absolutely, and I don't think that's being a good legislator. I don't. I have absolutely no problem with an after-school program, but I've got to see some data, and I'm quite sure you're accurate. I'm sure you have checked on it. But if I'm going to be a legislator, we have to act as a body, and I've got to see some data. And I have no problem with it, but I need to see some data before I start pulling 100 grand from somewhere.
If I could, point of clarification, that's why you put myself and Bill John on the Head Start committee, was so that we go to the meetings every month and we could see what their needs are and what their figures were. And that, as a result of those meetings, is what we're bringing this information back to you for. Just like you're on an advisory committee, and I would expect if you see something in your area, you're going to bring it back to this committee. That's what we're trying to do, is bring that information back as your advisory members for Head Start.
Councilor Busser.
Does this increase include Head Start centers in other counties? Are we talking about all Head Start centers for Cherokee Nation?
Basically, that 100,000 would only take care of the
Cherokee County.
circle.
Well, you know, I'd have a problem with that, because we have a Head Start center there at the clinic in Jay, and it's not getting served, so I couldn't support it.
She's bringing the amendment another 25.
If you want to make that?
Okay. So the motion is that we do 100,000 under the after-school program with the fund from the general fund.
Can I ask how many Head Start centers we have?
Councilor Fishing, I'll ask how many Head Start centers we have.
Well,
You built one in each county.
some of them school based, some of
One in
them.
each school.
Are we talking Head Start centers or early Head Start centers?
Head Start.
Talking about the Head Start centers. Well, that would be 23, and that would include earlies, right? Yeah, 23 centers. Now, understand that the 23 centers, but that doesn't mean, of course, that there's a uniform number of people at each center. We have about 680 students, and in order to, in Head Start, and then we have another 162 in early Head Start. So we're talking about a couple of hours time. I understand that early Head Start's out at 2:30, that's where the real problem comes in. Even with some of our public schools, where teachers in the public schools who sponsor a Head Start have children in the early Head Start, and they have to go get them at 2:30 and bring them back to school or whatever. So if we're talking about an after-school program until like 5:30 or 6 o'clock, then we're talking about 600 and I'm talking about 700, at least 750 students probably, if they all participate. And that would take a professional and a non-professional for a couple of hours a day. So you're talking about a couple of hours a day for 2 people for each block of 20 students. So if you take the 720 and divide that by 20, and you need that many professionals, not many non-professionals.
Times 2.
Yeah.
Dr. Morton,
80
the
times 2.
Head Start funding, can it not be used for after-school programs?
It could be, you know.
Not the early,
But the regular Head Start could, those funds, because that budget, as Callie said, is experiencing some budget increases in this cycle. But the after-school program that has been in the budget for the last 3 years Yeah, it expended 142 in '07, 190 in '08, and projected 165,000 in '09. Is that after-school program something different than what we're talking about here?
It's down at the
Yes.
Green Building.
Yes. It's totally different, different program. See, that $1,500 program was the $1,500 that we allocated to each school to encourage them to initiate an after-school program. Had nothing whatsoever to do with the Head Start. We counted it as an early childhood experience, you know, in this broad category of education. But it was, Head Start did not benefit at all from that 200,000.
That incentive
Yes.
budget is the one
That
that's
was
being
incentive
zeroed
budget
out.
to get schools to start an after-school program.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Jordan, you have another comment?
I called for the question.
Okay. Question's been called. 100,000 for the after-school program for the general fund. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Roll call, please.
Juliet Cook,
No.
Bradley Cobb,
No.
Joe Crittenden,
Yes.
Jody Fishinghop,
Yes.
Meredith Fraley. Yes. Janelle Fulbright,
Yes.
Don Garvin,
No.
Chuck Hopkins Jr.,
Yes.
Hannah Gloria Jordan,
Yes.
Chris Stowe,
No.
Curtis Snell,
Not here.
David Thornton,
Yes.
Kara Cowan Watts,
No.
Bill England,
No.
Bill John Baker,
Yes.
Jack Baker,
No.
Harley Buzzer.
No.
8-8.
Okay, motion fails. Okay. Okay. Councilor Fishinghop. Excuse me, Jordan.
Well, now I make a motion then for 300,000 to fund all of the sites for a after-school program. We've been doing some figuring here and we can do it for 300,000, given the figures that Neil just gave us.
And that is from the general fund?
Yes.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. There's- I did have a second.
That will take care of all of it.
Take care of it.
Do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, excuse me, Councilor Thornton. I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Before I vote on this, I'd like to find out where the sites are.
Let's ask Neil to come up.
Any way we can get a,
Not in this week. Sites are scattered throughout 14 counties.
they wouldn't be in this budget?
Sorry,
The sites wouldn't be in this budget in any way?
not identified site.
Well, I was,
As that document or folks you step outside and get it.
I thought some ways go through this budget is not anything resembles the first budget I went to. So we're actually going through government department to ask justification for funding. And this constitution law, and that's been mentioned here. We're ready this. We're not going through for justification for department and re-see how much fully in there. So that's my, to see exactly how many and they are. So, us as cities are more important. The main differences from advisory members is seeing more hard work every month. That hosts